Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and as we keep saying, Reform UK's policies just do not stand up to scrutiny. In fact, if you ask the right questions, do you know what it turns out? It turns out Reform UK have got absolutely zero policies at all. This is best highlighted with a Krishnan Guru Murthy interview of Dame Andrea Jenkyns, my now Reform UK mayor, thank you very much people around here, who simply had no answer to anything to do with, well, what would you do about asylum and what are you going to do to boost women's rights? But first, for daily news and commentary, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So the easiest way to do this is just to put the clips up and go through in real time, I think.
I started by asking her what reform would do with all the asylum seekers who are in Britain now.
Well, as Reform said, we would deport them. We need to process them and send them. We've also, I mean...
When you say process them, do you mean assess their claim?
Well, process them to find...
So first bit, just to note, is she's unable to say that that's what she means. Because again, let us be clear, process them could include just mean, oh, well, we'll get their names and details, then we know where to send them to, right? But in reality, processing them actually means, oh, you've got an asylum claim, let's see if it's valid or not. That's what they actually mean. But they don't want to say it. How come she can't just say no to that if that is indeed what she's intending? How come she can't say no? First thing to note.
Currently, more than half of them end up being given leave to remain.
No, but you also need to know where they're coming from, don't you? So you've got to process them. But
so you know where they're coming from. Of course, you've got to know where they're coming from to process their claims. Again, she's just saying words at this point, and then she's trying to move it on. Oh, this isn't what I want to talk about. This isn't what I'll talk about. Of course, you've got to know their name. You've got to know where they've come from. You've got to know what is their specific asylum claim. You've got to know what evidence they've got to back up that asylum claim, because just because a country might, in theory, persecute someone for a particular thing, or just because where you've come from may have suffered catastrophic climate damage, doesn't necessarily mean that you will win your asylum claim. So, of course, you've got to find all this out.
What I'm trying to understand, actually, is this conference is about women, so why are we talking about this?
Well, because you're talking about them, aren't you, as a safety question?
Yes, that's...
So, again, just to make this clear, so Reform UK, and I'll come on to this in a moment as well, are putting on a conference which is supposed to be about, you know, what they can do to protect women, right? So she's asking, well, why are you asking me about asylum when this is a women's conference? And it is, as Guru Murthy just said there, because Reform UK frame asylum as a women's issue. They frame it as a women's issue.
One aspect of it,
So you believe they are a threat to women's safety. So what would you do with them?
Regarding illegal migrants, we've got to document them. We've got to process them, send them.
So again, pick on every word here. She says you've got to document them and process them, as if they're two different things. And again, that's because they're being evasive here, because they know if they're in government, this fantasy land that they're demonstrating, that every single person who comes into this country and claims asylum, right, every single one who does that, they say they're just going to deport them. They're not. And they know they're not, because they know they can't, right? It's not that they wouldn't want to, by the way. They just know they can't. So that's why they've been incredibly evasive about what they would do. And you've got this sign here, document and process. Well, document's what you were talking about before in terms of getting their details. Processing is very different. Processing is what? That's looking at their claim. And if they've got a valid claim, going, yeah, you've got a valid claim. You're now not an asylum seeker, you're a refugee. And if it's not a valid claim, then you can deport them, just as the current government are. There's no difference here between what Reform UK, according to Andrea Jenkyns, would do and what the current Labour government's doing.
To their country of origin. We already saw a press conference a few weeks ago with Nigel looking at the countries to send them to, for processing. But ultimately, we want to start closing down these hotels so people feel safe in their environment.
But would you keep processing them?
So I am going to pick on this as well. So how does having people in a hotel not make people safe in their environment? Because your environment's not a hotel, except when you're staying at a hotel. Like, none of the, again, It's this idea that all asylum seekers are dangerous rather than a vanishingly small number of them.
And would you keep assessing their claims, or would you just stop assessing their claims for asylum and say, no, you're all out?
Look, I mean, personally, I think all out. You come here.
So she says, personally, you're all out. So she's trying to give this impression, oh, no, we mean you're all out. But first of all, she says, she adds the word personally because then it's not official policy, right? And beforehand, she couldn't just simply say, because he's been asking now, he's asking the same question over and over again. He's trying to do it in different ways, and he keeps trying to phrase it differently so that she can answer it. But what he's been spending the first few minutes, the first minute and a bit, asking is, all the people coming over here claiming asylum, what are you going to do with them all? Are some of them going to stay because they're genuine claimants, and you're only going to deport the ones the government are already deporting? Or are you going to deport the ones without assessing their claim? And she can't say that. She'll say, oh, personally, I would say all of them. But that personally is anything. That's not a policy. What's your party's policy?
Here illegally, go. That's my view. But I think
so
you're
what about
missing
those people who come from countries where you can't send people back to Iran because there's no route.
Well, this is
so
why
where would you send them?
This is why we're looking at the host country, isn't it? But what you're also missing, what about on a daily basis, the crimes committed by British people as well?
I mean, the vast majority of sexual crimes are committed by British-born people, aren't they?
Well, so, I think the issue there, I'd correct you there in the fact, the issue there...
That's a fact.
No, but you say that. Look, when I was...
He says that because it is actually a fact.
An MP, I was in the chamber, and I asked for transparency, and so we can publish crimes per nationality. The civil service was reluctant to do that.
But the real problem at the moment is rape, isn't it? Because rape convictions are down. They are a terribly small number anyway, compared to the number of rapes that actually happen. That's a huge compounded problem.
But not all get reported. That's the issue.
No, but even amongst those that do get reported, we have a very low success rate in terms of...
And of course, the reason why many are not reported is because we have a ridiculously lengthy procedure, thanks to her party, her former party, chopping courts and meaning that violent crimes like this can take years to come to court, putting the victim through the ringer, and at the end of it, a tiny proportion of convictions. Her party's fault.
Convictions.
Yes,
so what would you do about that?
Well, we've got to encourage reporting more. We've got to change the culture.
So she says encourage reporting more. Absolutely. What's she going to do that's different to what the current Labour government are doing? Which is to actually put, for example, specialist teams, particularly for domestic violence, into every 999 control room. What is she going to do? I
mean, look, I've been in a domestic abuse relationship myself. There was no rape. And it can kill somebody. It can make them want to give up on life. And,
distraction. She's still not saying what she would do. So she's now saying she's got personal experience of this. The fact that she can openly say that and no one bats an eyelid just shows you, and this is going to come on to a point she's going to make in a moment, just shows you, for example, how widespread domestic violence is and domestic abuse is. It's not always violence, sometimes it's psychological abuse. But how widespread it is, that it's no big thing for an MP to say, oh yes, I was in such a relationship, right? Because it's been normalised. It's too widespread. So she's lived that life. She's been an MP for years. She cannot name one. Does that mean, is that because she can't think of any policies? Or is it as more likely, despite the fact that Reform UK are holding this conference, that her own party doesn't have a single policy to help protect women? Because that's what it sounded like to me. She's being asked, how are you going to protect women from domestic violence? She's not able to name one policy.
I'm standing up for those women. I want them to come forward and realise with reform you have got a voice.
Well, I get, you see, from your press conference that you are saying, we stand with you, this is a big problem. What I'm not getting is what your actual policy ideas are.
Well, we'll put more resources into our police.
More resources into the police. Anyone can say this, by the way. We'll just put more resources into it, more resources. Where are these resources coming from? We already know their spending plans are like 10 times it creates a deficit 10 times the size of Liz Truss. And also, what are these resources? Labour said we're going to put more resources into it. What were those more resources? We're going to have a named community officer. You're going to have specialist teams in every 999 room, specialist domestic violence teams to help protect women. The specific policies that they're now enacting, they're now putting in place, that are now in motion, because they didn't just say, oh, we'll put more resources in. What resources, and where would they come from?
Make sure that it's targeted in areas like this. We will put more resources into our justice system, so we process claims a lot more. There's got to be
more courts open up, more lawyers, more legal aid. Are they going to fund more legal aid? Where are the details? And also, where's the detail? Because as soon as they come up with the details, right, then someone says, oh, so how are you going to pay for it? Because remember, the spending plans Nigel Farage already went through this year have already been blown away. The IFS have said you haven't got a way to pay for these. You're not explaining how you're going to pay for these. What she's talking, he didn't mention any of this, by the way. None of this was mentioned by Nigel Farage in his spending plans. So she's now she's hinting at extra spending plans, but she's not going to say what they are, because as soon as they say what they are, first of all, people could look at it and go, well, that's not even going to scratch the surface. But more importantly, then they'll say, so how are you going to pay for it? And they don't want that conversation. So they're just going to say, well, we'll just put more resources in, more resources.
More support for women out there.
I mean, you talked about your own experience. I mean, you know, between a third and a half of rapes and sexual assaults are believed to be carried out in the home by a partner or former partner. What do we as a society do about that? Because that's got nothing to do with migrants or anything like that,
No, but some have. Of course.
Yeah, somehow, but they're to do with society and everybody.
Yes, to do with society. One is too much.
Exactly. What I'm saying is the vast majority of these crimes.
But some is cultural as well.
So she says some is cultural. So again, they're trying to push this line that people from certain countries, right, or they have a cultural problem with their views of women and stuff like that. We're one of them. We have male against female domestic abuse and violence so widespread that an MP, a female MP, can say she was in an abusive relationship. No one bats an eyelid. No one bats an eyelid. No one asks her for the details or what was the nature of the abuse or anything like this, because it's so accepted. Not accepted that it should be a thing, but it's accepted that it is widespread. That is our culture. That is our culture, British culture, that has allowed for biblical levels of domestic abuse. A biblical plague of domestic abuse in this country, which has nothing to do with immigration. This is white knuckle draggers doing this, who can trace their lineage right back to Charlemagne.
Or nothing to do with culture. Cultural. They're done by...
Some is... I wish he'd have, and he didn't, unfortunately, I wish he'd have said, yeah, British culture, because there's so much of it committed by born and bred white Brits that in actual fact, this some of it being cultural. Yeah, do you know what's cultural? Telling people not to report it, or, it'd be bad for the kids, it'll be bad for the relationships, you just have to suck it up. That's British culture, right? They don't complain about that. They don't attack British culture for that, do they?
Oh, come on. No, but some is culture. We need better talking between the social services, with the police. It's got to be a lot tighter than it is. Everything takes too long.
This party, of course, also had an MP who had a history of a conviction for violence against his own partner.
Yeah.
But how much of a problem is that for... Now, he's not a Reform MP now because of another investigation.
Parliament's a microcosm of society. So, of course, you're going to get this.
Because he was, the party was asked about.
I will just point out, this did not transpire since he became an MP. It was known about before he was selected by her party to be a candidate in a winnable seat for their party. Let's just be clear about that. This didn't come out after he was elected. This is something that Reform UK knew about his past.
It's right at the beginning, weren't they?
I also believe in restorative justice.
This is the last point she makes, by the way. I'm just going to point this out as my last thing. There was no restorative justice with James McMurdoch. But we'll just see what she says she thinks. I am all for restorative justice. But he did not undergo restorative justice.
If he's a great husband, I understand he's a father now. And
that's restorative justice. That he's got with someone else and he's impregnated her. That's not restorative justice. Restorative justice means you go some way to, you either pay it forward or pay it back. You know, ideally, if you've wronged someone, then you do something to make it up for them, right? If you can't do that, you do something to help others before they get to that point. So if James McMurdoch, this would be restorative justice. If James McMurdoch had, got rid of the wrong thing there. If he had spent the intervening years campaigning for women's rights against domestic abuse, if he said, look, I've committed domestic abuse and I want to engage with young men and talk these things through and also help women see the warning signs, stuff like that. If he'd have done that, if he'd have played his part in trying to help people in domestic abuse situations or try to help people avoid getting into domestic abuse situations, if he'd have done that, that would have been restorative justice. But he hasn't, has he? He hasn't. So how is it restorative justice? Because he's now got, he might be, he's married, I think she's suggesting, and he's got a kid. How's that restorative justice? He hasn't restored any justice at all. Are we supposed to be pleased that maybe he's not abusing his current partner? Because that's not restorative either to his former partner. But there it is anyway. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Until next time, I'll see you later.